From selling drugs to creating the School of Divine? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to episode 24 of the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree, and I have a special one for you today. I got someone named Kat Kim, someone I'm very excited to interview. I'm super excited at that. Before we get into that, we'll continue our little daily stroll down the river of awesome. What happened if you were to make being your ultimate self your God? The ultimate version of you, the thing you worship, the thing you strive for. Yes, the Church of Awesome. And now we're going to talk about commandment 4 of the Church of Awesome. I think the first 4 commandments are by far the most important. In fact, honestly, I could stop here if I wanted to after this one, because this one is that darn good. Yes, the 4th is treat others awesome. If you listen to some of my podcasts, you've heard I was part of a mastermind group. That mastermind group was led by Fabian Fredrickson. I always wondered why people didn't mention that. Maybe I didn't know there was an unspoken rule, but I was part of the Client Attractive Business School because I wanted to attract clients. One thing that I love that Fabian said over and over again is a rising tide raises all ships. Meaning that if you were to get better, help someone else do better in life, that you would also do better and the people around them will also do better. I mean, that is the tenet of Joyous Expansion, which you raise your vibration, thus raising the vibration of people around you. And one way to raise the people of the people around you is to treat them awesome. There's so many things fall under this commandment. Number 1, when it comes to selling even, I heard this, I've talked to so many people who do network marketing, and the way they truly fill their business, they find out about the person, treat them as awesome as possible, find them clients. And if you do that with enough people, they will find you clients. When you treat other people well, they will treat you well. Of course, remember, commandment 2 is treat yourself awesome. So if you treat someone well and they treat you like dog dookie, do not continue to be with them or have them in your life, because you're not treating yourself well by surrounding yourself with them. Always remember, all commandments build on each other. All commandments work on each other. So the better you treat other people. And remember, this is who you want to be represented to other people. That's the most important part of living that awesome life, is how you want to be represented, how you want to go forth in this world. And how you treat people is how you display who you are to them. You can say anything. You can say anything over and over and over again. But if you give and you serve and you raise their vibration, that will come back to you. When I was a kid, there was a song that I loved so much, which is, love is something, if you give it away, give it away, give it away, you end up having more. Love is like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it, you'll have so many. Rolling all over the floor. Basically telling me that if you treat people with love, you treat people with kindness, you treat people awesome, you create more awesome. I mean, imagine a world where people treated everybody the best that they can. People actually talk to each other on the internet instead of saying, you're a big dummy, how dare you not like this intellectual property that I like, and treated them with respect. Treated them as if they want to be. I mean, it's almost in every religion, some form of a golden rule. Treat other people how you want to be treated. This one is so important because it's so important how you treat others. Of course, you want to treat yourself awesome. Thus, I just want to reiterate over and over again, I'm not saying let people abuse you, let people take advantage of you, let people push you around. Heck no. That's not treating yourself awesome. That's not having an awesome mindset. That's why this is the 4th commandment and not the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Because it's important. It's very important to take care of yourself. It's very important to not have abusive people in your life. But at the same time, it's very important to treat other people well. It's very important for you not to be one of those abusers. This might be controversial, but in my humble opinion, this means that if you're a Christian who believes that homosexuality is a sin, you bake that cake. And if you want to prove that Christianity is this amazing thing, you treat them the best as possible and put all your love into that cake. Show them the love of Christ in your work. Not through denying, not through treating them poorly. Show them who you are by what you do. Your actions speak louder than words. You can say how much you love people. You can say how a loving, good person you are. But if you treat others poorly, you are not. Period. End of story. And that is why the fourth commandment is treat others awesome. Well, now that I got that out of the way, let's talk about my interview. Today I'm interviewing with Kat Kim, someone who I met 11, 12 years ago. Is one of those people that show up in your suggested friends on Facebook, and people we hung around with similar people. In fact, I was a slow person in this coaching school called Invite Change. I went to the class, ran out of money. I need to go to the next one. And so my class went on, and then Kat Kim joined their class. So when I went to watch their graduation, which was a lot of people I met, which was an amazing time. That was fun watching their graduation. That's when I actually met Kat Kim in person. I've seen her around, I've watched her grow, and honestly, I kind of look up to her, someone who goes through a lot of things. But unlike me during these years, I don't see her giving up, at least not as much as I have. I am not the king of consistency, but I see someone going through way worse than me and still moves forward. I am so inspired by her, and when I thought of starting this podcast, one of the people I very much wanted to have on was Kat Kim. Kat Kim is a spiritual teacher, workshop leader, and founder of the School of Divine Confidence, which offers spiritual training and confidence coaching to emerging leaders, spiritual seekers, and changemakers who are ready to come out of hiding and reclaim their confidence and personal power. A former convicted drug offender and crack addict who faced 3 years in state prison, her radical transformation has landed her on the set with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a contributing coach and mentor on his motivational reality TV show called Wake Up Call that aired nationally on TNT. She was also featured as a finalist in the New York Television Festival's Lifetime Unscripted Development Pipeline as a successful Seattle entrepreneur. After battling addiction, abuse, bullying, and depression for decades, Kat now helps women all over the world step into the best version of themselves where they can truly make a difference. Now, here's my interview with the one, the only, Kat Kim. Hello, Kat Kim, and welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Brett. It's so good to be here.
It's so awesome to have you here. I've known you for a while now as we both graduated from Invite Change and graduated a little before me. I remember watching your graduation's little speech that you gave and thought, wow, this person is special.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Invite Change, for people who don't know, is the coaching training that we both came out of. But we've known each other for many years, right? And we've been Facebook friends for a long time as well. So it's really cool to be on this podcast with you.
It is. I've been to a couple of your live things that you've done, and it's always been fun watching you grow through the last 10 to 11 years since I've known you.
Yeah. There's been a lot of growth for sure.
That's the fun part about life, always growing.
Yeah, it can be fun. It can be hell. It's necessary.
That is so true.
Yeah.
So let's start with the nitty gritty here.
Sure.
So you are a convicted drug offender and crack addict?
Wow. You went straight for it, didn't you? Yes, I am. Yeah, that's part of the growth that I was talking about. That can be hell. Yeah, there's quite a bit of story there. As you know now, I'm a spiritual teacher, and I founded a school called the School of Divine Confidence, and I help emerging leaders and spiritual seekers and changemakers step into the best version of themselves so that they can go out there, come out of hiding and go out there and make a difference in the world. It did not all start that way for sure. I don't even know where to begin with my story, but I can backtrack all the way to when I was a young child, which is it's common, right? We take in, as young children, we're just sponges for the information, the conversations that are going around in our environment, whether it's within our family unit or at school or media. We just take that all in and we start assimilating all of this into our minds, and it becomes such a part of who we are. And most of the time, well, I wouldn't say most of the time, so much of the time, it isn't healthy. It isn't the healthy stuff that's going in. A lot of it is really, really toxic and unhealthy, depending on your family environment. I grew up in a pretty toxic environment. My mother began feeding me diet pills when I was 6 years old. I really don't remember if it's because she wanted me to lose weight and so she was feeding me these diet pills, or if it was because I was asking her to help me lose weight. Because I actually remember seeking my mom's help. Mom, can you help me lose weight? So I don't know which came first, but I definitely remember feeling really unworthy. I felt ugly. I felt fat. I felt this incredible pressure and desire to change myself and conform so that I could be like everyone else. I definitely felt this feeling that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And all of this starting in second grade, you know? And thus began a lifelong struggle of low self-confidence, low self-image, and really, really unhealthy body image issues. And I grew up in a emotionally abusive and physically abusive environment. So I started rebelling at a very young age, and I started smoking and drinking at 13. I started doing hardcore drugs at 16. And by the time I was 18, I was selling cocaine. I was dealing and I was transporting it from Washington State to California on the plane. This is before 9/11. So man, Brett, you would not even, it was so easy. It's ridiculous how easy it was. It's pathetic, actually, how easy it was. I put it in my purse, I put it in my suitcase. I barely hid it. Of course, things are the security is way different after 9/11, but it wasn't difficult. I got caught. I was handcuffed, put behind bars, and I was suddenly facing 3 years in state prison. And you know what? Even at that time, though, I didn't care. I didn't care what happened to me. I had such low self-esteem or low self-respect and regard for myself that it didn't even scare me. I was absolutely fearless, but it wasn't the type of fearlessness that comes from courage. It wasn't the type that comes from a calling. It was just it was a dangerous type of self-loathing and self-disrespect that comes from not giving a shit what happens to my life and my future and my body. There I was. And even while I was in jail, I was trying to make drug deals. And I was trying to just take people down with me. My intention wasn't to take people down with me. I've never had that type of intention. It was just that I didn't care what happened to me. It was very, very reckless. Yeah.
One thing I've heard on this podcast multiple times is verbal abuse as a child. And I was wondering if you're willing to elaborate on how that looked for you.
Gosh, the verbal abuse, I'm trying to think of very specific things. The verbal abuse came with the physical abuse. I was hit a lot. I was, like I said, I was fed diet pills. Oh, I do remember, because I was just 6 years old, I could barely reach over the counter, and my mom would take the pills out and she would cut them in half. I was very curious. I was just thinking, and I remember asking her, I was like, why are you cutting these in half? And she said, well, these big ones are for adults and you're only a child, so you only need half of them. And I just accepted that. I accepted what was going on in this exchange and this dynamic, that I needed to be fixed as a child and I had to take pills. I needed something outside of me to fix what was wrong with me on the inside. And this is what my mother, this is something that my mother was telling me, whether it was indirect or direct, and I think abuse comes in so many forms. There wasn't so much verbal, of course there were. I guess it's, sometimes, Brett, some of this stuff is so internalized that you don't even know if it's your parents saying them to you or if it's just my own self. But definitely I was led to believe that there's just something fundamentally wrong with me.
So based off the actions of your parents, it almost created a verbal abuse inside your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's how, and That's how sensitive and prime our young minds are when we're out in the world and we're taking in all this information. There's a message that we're receiving, even if it's indirect. And with everything that's going out in the world right now and all the media, and I have to say, I'm so glad I grew up in my era before all of this social media came out. I would have been caught so much. I was already caught by the law. But it would have been so much worse if I was caught on Instagram stories or on a Facebook Live doing half the stuff that I did. So I almost feel blessed that I grew up in the time that I grew up in, and there's no real physical evidence floating around on the interwebs of me making crazy mistakes. What the kids go through now, taking in all of that media and Snapchat and all of that, is just insane, the types of messages that they're taking in, especially in this culture. And this is kind of where I speak a lot about this. You might have heard me talk about how we live in a consumer culture that really brainwashes us into believing that there's something fundamentally wrong with us and that we need to conform and buy something outside of us in order for us to be okay. So this struggle to reclaim your power and your confidence is really, for me, in the work that I do, it's about liberating yourselves from the demands of the consumer culture first. We really have to become aware of it, and we have to be able to call it out when we see it. Otherwise, we're constantly, it's like the sea that we swim in. We can't escape all of the media and all the advertising. There's no way we can escape it. But we have to be hyper vigilant and aware of how powerful it is, and that it's in every, the minute that I don't do this anymore because I've stopped doing it. But even just a few months ago, the first thing I would do is pick up my cell phone when I wake up and I turn it on and I'm scrolling. I'm scrolling through the inbox. I'm scrolling through Facebook, and it's like, right in that moment, that precious moment between sleep and being awake, when your subconscious mind is so open and receptive. What am I doing? I'm picking up my phone and I'm feeding it all the ads that keep popping up, all these offers. And it's just, wow. I was like, I need to stop that. I need to not let that be the first thing I do when I wake up. But we have to be aware. We have to be aware of it. We can't escape it entirely, but we have to become aware of it if we want to find.
I think the funny thing is, growing up, I always learned that AI was going to be the scary thing because it's going to determine humans aren't worthy and kill us all. But the reality is, what AI does now is pretty much figure out how to sell us things in ways that are so crazy that once I woke up with my left shoulder hurting, I never talked about it. But for some reason, Facebook showed me an ad for a sling.
Oh, yeah.
You even say it out loud.
Wow. That's insane. Yeah. It's where we're headed. It's absolutely where we are headed. And, Facebook itself has that, the name that they call it, it slips my mind right now. The funnel, when echo chamber. Right? We turn on Facebook and we scroll. It's not just Facebook. It's when we go on Google. There's an echo chamber. We're in our own little bubble, and each of us have created our own little reality depending on the things that we talk about and search. It's dangerous if we're not aware of this, because then we become so closed off to the world outside of us, and we become really focused on just our internal thoughts and our internal world, and we become so disconnected with humans and other people in other parts of the world and how they think, and we see that right now with people just fighting all the time on social media over politics, right? And it's just a really sad.
They actually have algorithms to change the headlines of stories based off your political views.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, Brett. And so these are the things that we have to become awakened to, I think. My work is primarily about helping people step into their calling and finding their confidence and reclaiming their power. Part of that for me, as I said earlier, is so much about being aware of what the things that you're talking about. We have to be aware of that, because if we're not, then we're constantly thinking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Well, the thing is we're being fed all the things that tell us what's wrong with us. And so we have to liberate ourselves from that. I strongly believe that we have to really begin the journey of liberating ourselves from the demands of the consumer culture, whether that's consuming products, whether that's consuming media, whether that's consuming information. It's all consuming.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense to what you were saying earlier about being at a young age and wanting to fit in, especially at the age of around 8 or 9 is when we stop start separating ourselves with our parents and start defining ourselves from our peer group, the people around us, and wanting to fit in
Yeah.
there.
Yep. Absolutely. I think also being a person of color, and I didn't even realize this until just a couple days ago as I was kind of reminding myself of my time when I was 6 or 7 years old. I was surrounded by, I was like the only Asian girl in my class. Maybe there was another Asian girl. I distinctly remember thinking I have to look like all my white friends without even knowing, right? I wasn't aware. I wasn't even thinking that she's white and I'm Asian. It wasn't even like that. It was just that there was something about them that felt right. And I had to learn how to be like that, and that there was something wrong about me.
Oh, I understand that as being, there weren't very many, mulatto kids growing up. And so I had that with the white kids and the group of black kids as well, that I was, no matter what, always different, always
Right.
kind of on the outside,
Yeah.
and having to justify my amazing fro. God, my fro was awesome.
Yeah. I totally relate to that. I completely relate to that. Yeah. In fact, so yeah, I've always felt like an outsider, not quite this nor that. I think there's a part of me that's just kind of naturally that way anyway. I think I was born into this world to be a bit of a nonconformist. Because I just don't really I don't like to follow the herd. And wherever the herd is going, I'm like, and I'll go the opposite way. Sometimes it's not necessarily a good thing. It's just kind of a natural thing I do. But I realize that there are a lot of people who feel this way. I call myself a misfit, a nonconformist. And so a lot of the work that I do is really about helping people like you or I who've never really felt like they fit in, who's always felt like they're an outsider. Those are the people that I really, 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 really love working with and helping them to come out of hiding and step into, their calling to make an impact in the world. That's my favorite. I am such a champion for nonconformists and misfits.
Well, that's one thing I want to start with this podcast, and that's one reason why I like interviewing awesome people like you, is just having people like you tell their story and making people recognize, holy crap, I am not alone. Because that's, for most of my life, that's how I felt. I felt I was the only person going through this issue, the only person with extreme social anxiety, the only person that could understood. And if I heard that I wasn't the only one at the age of 15, that would have been amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is really, really great. Absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy because people see me now and they think, and when I tell my story about being a convicted drug offender, I was a crack addict. It was insane. I was a social degenerate. I was homeless for a while. I went to jail and I was arrested in Oakland. It's like notorious at that time for being one of the most dangerous cities in the United States, notorious for its high rates of homicides and violent crimes. That's the type of experience that I was attracting to myself, because, that's what happens when we bring into our life experiences that validate our internal beliefs to be true, whether those beliefs are true or not. Because I thought I was unworthy, because I thought that I didn't matter, I attracted everything into my life that validated those beliefs to be true, whether it was being arrested or getting involved with relationships with men that were abusive, or just I've made so many mistakes. I've made so many mistakes, and I have carried a lot of shame around because I thought I was this person who was just bad. I was just a bad person, a bad little girl. That was the message I received. And now that I talk about it, that was actually the verbal. I did receive the verbal, like, you are a bad girl, a bad girl. You are such a bad girl. You should feel lucky that you have a home and whatever. There was telling me that I'm a bad girl, and there was a lot of guilt that was also tied in with that, because I'm a bad girl and I have a home and I have all these things that I should feel lucky and, all that stuff. Oh man, these beliefs, gosh, for anyone who's doing transformative work, these are the beliefs that we have to uncover, because they control us. They're deep in our unconscious mind, and they dictate how we think and feel and how we behave, whether we're aware of it or not.
That is so true. Awareness I always think, is the first step towards change.
Yeah, that's what I say. Hey. Absolutely. Awareness is always the first step to transformation. Always. No matter what.
So one thing that just got me thinking is, looking at you, the last thing I think is somebody who went through drug addiction. It's not because of who you are. It's most because of the pictures that are put into my head through media of what a crack addict is.
Ah, wow. That's interesting that you say that. Yeah, and there's a stigma, and gosh, man, I'm kind of just pausing because that's such a big statement because again, it's media putting out to us images of what a crack addict is, or what a homeless person is, or what a Black person is, or what an Asian person is, or what a white man is. You know what I mean? Like it's
Oh, yeah.
this, it's this conditioning of visual images and words where we begin to take that in and just we create our reality with that when it's completely wrong in so many cases. I'm not saying it's always wrong. There's some good media outlets who try to do their best in storytelling, and truth telling, man, really, there's a lot of false narratives out there.
Yeah, it can be really insidious. I remember
Mhm.
one time I'm not proud of once I had this thought, but I remember getting into a bus and the bus driver was this gorgeous Asian woman. And my first thought is, you are way too attractive to be driving a bus.
Oh. Yeah. You know what, Brett? So let me tell you, this is a story. It just popped into my mind. I had no intention of sharing this, but that's an example of a type of racism where it's like the model minority. Obviously, I'm Asian. And so let me just backtrack. Here is where I experienced racism on on different levels at the same time. So when I got arrested, I'm not even going to go into all the crazy details. Just when I got arrested, I ended up on a shuttle bus. When I came off of the airplane from Oakland Airport, I had my luggage with me. I got onto a shuttle bus and I was headed to my apartment. And the shuttle bus driver was a brown man, and he ended up dropping everybody off. Somehow I ended up being the last person to be dropped off, and I was in the front seat. And telling you, like I said earlier, you attract people experiences into your life that validate your beliefs to be true. So somehow I started talking to this guy and we started talking about drugs. How crazy is that? I just got off the plane and now we're talking about illegal substances. And I said, oh yeah, I have some. He was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I want some. So this guy pulls over the shuttle bus. It's a commercial truck. It's labeled as a shuttle bus, and so he pulls it over into the Oakland Hills. Apparently that's where I was. And it's dark, I think, or it was like dusk. It was not completely light. I just remember it starting to get dark. And he pulls over and he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, okay. So I pulled some out and I gave him some. I didn't do any, but he took a piece of paper and he started doing the cocaine thing, which is, I don't want to get into those details, but he started snorting cocaine in the car behind the driver's seat. And all of a sudden, right when he was doing that, we saw a flashlight into the window and it was a cop.
Oh,
And the
wow.
cop was like knocking on the door. He's like, what are you guys doing in there? And he threw the bus driver, he threw the coke into the middle of between my seat and his seat, just on the middle there. Cause what else is he going to do? So he just threw it down. And long story short, there were 2 cops that came. They ended up arresting the guy. Okay. He did get caught red-handed with the cocaine. But here's what happened, which kind of was the beginning of just a weird, I don't know. I learned a lot from this experience, not just in that moment, but years and years and years and years afterward in hindsight. They arrested him. They let me go. They were like, hey, what are you doing? You need to be careful. And they were like, here, just sit down here. And I sat down on a rock. And I was watching this whole thing unfold before me. And I heard him, read his Miranda rights to this guy. And they arrested him. And I had cocaine in my purse. And so I was like, what am I going to do? So I took it out from my purse without them seeing me. And I threw it behind the rock that I was sitting on. And as this all was kind of unfolding, I had suddenly a really, really, really strong voice that came into my head. And I'm a spiritual teacher now, but at that time, I didn't believe in God. I had a really bad experience with God and church, so completely denounced it. And for many years after, I still didn't believe in God. But in that moment, I heard a voice, and the words were, "The truth will set you free." And I was like, oh my God, are you serious right now? And it was so strong. And in that moment, it was like, oh yeah, that was a voice from God, even though I didn't believe in God. And all of a sudden, something completely took over me. I wasn't even worried. I heard that voice, the truth will set you free. And then I also had this just deep, deep sense of and knowing that I was the one that was supposed to take ownership of this and that I was the one to go and that I would be okay. So I told the cops, officers, actually that cocaine is mine. And they were like, what? And they're like, you should just please let him go. Take me instead. And they were just like dumbfounded. They're like, because they had already booked him. They had already put him inside the car. And I was like, no, it really is mine. And I went behind the rock. I pulled out the stash that I threw back there. And I was like, look, it's mine. And then at that point, they're like, what? So I was like, please release him. Take me. And then the next set of events that happened, I just remember one of the cops taking him out and I remember him saying, the cop saying to the guy, this is your lucky day. And then they let him go and he left. And then they had to deal with me. One of the cops, he was another Asian man, but he was like, why are you doing this? And I said, it's just, I don't know, but it's mine. It's just my stuff. I have more in my suitcase. And he was like, wow, I actually just wanted to take you out, for drinks or dinner. And I'm like, that's nice. But I just remember that comment being made, this whole thing. I guess this all kind of relates to being a person of color. Even though I'm a person of color, I was still treated better than Black and brown people. You know what I mean? And so there's these layers and layers of just kind of racism and experiences of racism that have been both positive, but also being a model minority. It's like, it's better, but it all kind of also ties into not being white, nor I'm not Black, obviously. And in the conversation that's happening around race today, and on most days, it's about Black and white. And so it's this another experience of how do I fit into this? I don't really fit in. It's another experience of feeling kind of like an outsider. And so again, still trying to find my way as a minority who's a model minority, or not a model, not Black nor white, Anyway, long story. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I ended up going to jail. That's how I got caught. I kind of turned myself in.
Oh, wow. So that's very interesting. It's one thing that has come over my podcast multiple times is almost this divine guidance. And it was almost like divine guidance was that this is your point to turn it around. This is where I'm going to come through you.
Yeah. I love that. That's exactly what it was, for sure.
So after you got caught, how did you start taking your past experiences into becoming the founder of the School of the Divine Confidence?
That's a journey, of course, and I'm still on that journey. But essentially, I had to get really clear about who I was being called to be as a woman. That wasn't even my wake-up call, by the way. Going to jail wasn't my wake-up call. My wake-up call happened many, 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 many years after. I went to jail. I cleaned up. I still was carrying those deep, deep thoughts and feelings of not being good enough. So even though I stopped doing drugs, I was still getting involved and attracting toxic, abusive men into my life. I was depressed. I was still not talking to anybody. And it wasn't until I was walking down my hallway. This is now many years after going to jail. And I was going to my elevator, and there's this mirror, this big, huge mirror that was on the wall across the elevator door. And as I walked to the elevator door, I caught a glimpse of someone. She was standing there and she was really frumpy. Her hair was disheveled and her face was like so puffy and swollen. And it looked like she had some sort of rash or cystic acne or something. And it was more than just how she looked, though. There was this really deep, depressing energy that was coming from her. And at that moment, even though I was just wallowing in my own toxicity and depression and self-hate, I saw her and I was like, oh my God, at least I'm not that bad. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks that I was actually looking at myself in the mirror.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had become so disconnected with the woman that I know in my heart that I was being called to be and the person that I was actually showing up as. Those two are so disconnected that I didn't even recognize myself in the mirror when I saw myself. That was my turning point. That's when I decided I would do whatever it takes to become the woman that I wanted to be. I wanted to walk into a room and have people notice me, not for how I looked, but for my substance and for my character. I wanted to make an impact and do important things and transform lives. That was my secret burning desire. So this is one of the key things for people who just know in their bones, they have a secret burning desire. And it's a secret because they feel at that moment that it's something they can't do. It's so out of their league that it's like they don't share it with anybody because it's such a vulnerable thing to share because we think people are going to laugh at us, right? That was what I wanted so bad. I decided in that moment I would do whatever it takes to become that person. I became a professional image consultant, not because I wanted to be an image consultant, but I really immersed myself in the studies of body image and style and color and like how to transform our appearance in a way that matches who we are on the inside. And then I became a nationally certified personal trainer where I began studying what the physical body goes through to undergo transformation. I lost a bunch of weight. I began taking care of myself and showing up in a different way, dressing differently that really matched more of who I knew I was on the inside. And I became a transformative life coach through the same training that you went to, where we began studying the mindset and how our thoughts and our feelings all impact our behaviors, right? And my quest for transformation on the outside, it kept on taking me deeper and deeper inside. And I began studying spirituality and metaphysics and consciousness and energy. And, I became a licensed spiritual practitioner. I'm currently one foot in the ministerial path. We'll see how far that goes. But I do feel like I'm being called to share what I have learned about spirituality and power that is innately within each and every one of us. And so that's why I combined all of these, my backgrounds and my experiences overcoming addiction and abuse and body image and bullying and depression. That's why I started the School of Divine Confidence, because I wanted to help people just like myself who've never felt like they fit in, but they know in their bones that they're here to do something important. I want them to be able to step into that power and answer that call.
What do you love most about this, being the co-founder or the founder of the School of Divine Confidence?
Just what I said here is that I get to see people. One of my clients said this about me a long time ago, and it's kind of stuck with me. So, Professor X in Wolverines? X-Men. He said that I am like Professor X. And I was like, oh my God, yes. I have this school. I work with mutants, people who never really fit into society in this way or that way. They always felt like an outcast. I really do have a gift of being able to pinpoint those people and draw out their natural strength and their skills and their abilities. Even though they feel like there's something wrong with them, I'm really good at teaching them and showing them how everything that they think is wrong with them is exactly what they need to fuel their secret burning desire to step out and do their thing in the world. Because that's what I did, right? I feel like that's what I love the most, is seeing that moment where they're, oh my God, I can do it. I have that power.
Do they also get cool nicknames?
I should. We should do that.
So we're coming to the end of our interview together, and one thing I love to ask my interviewees is for 1 minute of motivation. You can think of this as if you have a time machine and you travel back to your 8-year-old self, but you only have 1 minute to convey a message to change your life forever, or just condense your life purpose message down to a minute.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I know that even though you feel pain, even though you feel shame, even though you feel regret for making mistakes or for not doing the thing that you think you should be doing, I know with 100% certainty that all of those things that you feel pain and shame about, those are actually going to fuel you. They are purposeful and they are divine, and all of those things are going to point you in the right direction of your true calling. And I know with 100% certainty that when you step into your divine calling, that you become the answer to someone's prayer.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat Kim, for coming to my podcast. It has been an honor for me to have you on
Yeah.
here, listening to your story of how you went through such harrowing experiences of something that this square can't understand, to being able to transform that into helping people reach their full potential in ways that they probably can't even imagine. I find extremely inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us, as well as your service to making this world a better
Oh,
place.
you are so welcome, Brett. I loved our time together. And I also just wanted to mention that one of the things that has helped me is I discovered a really easy one question that helps me move through these moments. And I actually created an audio training, a free audio training. Can I share it with you guys? Because I would love for you guys to be able to get access to this if you want. It's called From Shame to Confidence: How to Reclaim Your Personal Power with One Magical Question. And I kid you not, this question for me has been the thing that has helped me to overcome the shame and the guilt that I feel around topics like being a convicted drug offender or getting an abortion or making financial mistakes. I have made so many mistakes, but I have found that they really are purposeful, and there's a way to use those experiences to drive you into stepping into your true callings. I created this free audio training. It's half an hour, and you can get access to that at www.catkim.com/shame to confidence. And it's one word: shame to confidence.
Awesome. I'm sure that will help many people.
Yay.
So thank you for coming on. It's
Thank
special.
you, Brett. I'll see you soon.
And there you have it, folks. That is Kat Kim. I might apologize for a moment, but I am about to go on a rant because that is what I'm looking for when I interview people. These are the ones I love. Maybe because when I sent the podcast guests and a few people I've had on, they talked at me instead of with me. And when I first thought of this podcast, I thought, what do I want? I want to be the Mark Maron of personal development. That was my idea, getting to the nitty gritty, hearing people's personal stories, hearing people be vulnerable, and let me be vulnerable with myself to them and not just have them come on here and use my platform to sell what they do. And not saying Kat Kim didn't do a good job of selling the awesome person that she is and what she does and her personal philosophies, because honestly speaking, we get our personal philosophies from the times in our lives, the things that affected us, the stories that we had. And when we share those stories, that's when we connect. When I listen to my favorite motivational speakers, Les Brown, Brene Brown, even Joe Dispenza, it's those personal stories. Yes, I love listening to philosophy as much as the next guy, but if you just hand me that philosophy and say, here, what are you doing? How are you connecting? And Kat Kim did such an amazing job, in my humble opinion, connecting. I love her stories about what she did. I was very inspired. I loved that interview. It went 40 something minutes before I edited it down, mostly getting rid of some cuss words because I decided this is going to be a forking shirt free podcast. And also, I think there's an adult thing on iTunes. I don't want to get in trouble on iTunes. Someone might actually listen to me someday. But the thing is, I could have went longer. I could have talked to her all day. And if she ever wants to come back, I'm going to say heck yeah, because I would love to discuss any aspects of her life that she wants to, because honestly speaking, that to me is inspiring. That's the interviews I truly love. Sherazad's story was amazing. Going back, Philip Seymour, his talk, especially since he wasn't even there to sell anything, he was just there to tell his story, and that was awesome. And Camille Elizabeth, that one makes me sad because at this point in time, that is my least listened to podcast episode, and that is also one of my favorites. She poured her heart, she poured her soul, and those are the interviews I love. Most people who I've had so far on have fit into what I love. All of the interviews actually so far. So I guess it's some future ones if I decide to use them, because right now I'm thinking of not, to be honest. I don't know. I just felt talked at, not talked to. And what a conversation. Listening to how that moment where she looked in the mirror. Didn't you feel that? Didn't you feel what it's like to be disappointed in I mean, we do that. At one point in my life, I went from 315 to 350, bouncing back and forth, all the way up to 390, 400. That happened in a 6-month time. In my mind, I always saw myself as 350 to 315. It was actually when my book was released. I just ate. I never saw myself. And this thing is, I'm doing, personal development stuff. I'm working on myself. And yet that aspect of my life was hidden. It's so easy to hide from ourselves. It's so easy. I remember when I was a kid, I used to laugh at the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror. But the reality is, if you want to make this world a better place, you better look at yourself and make that change. Because mostly, if you want to make your life better, you have to look at the mirror. You have to see yourself. You have to be aware of where you are. So I'm very grateful for Kat Kim coming on here. I know I'm probably one of her number one fans, as I wasn't joking before the interview when I said that when I created this podcast, I had some dream guests, and Kat Kim was one of my dream guests. Because honestly, I don't know if I got a Greg Braden or a Joe Dispenza, would they tell me their story, or would they just tell me what their publicist would want them to say? If I got Mike Dooley or someone like that, would they connect with me? And Kat Kim was just perfect. Love this episode. And I also love Kat Kim. She's amazing. So if you wanted to get in touch with Kat Kim, she already told you, www.katkim.com/shame to confidence. She has a free how to reclaim your personal power with one magical question. It's an audio, so you can listen to it while you're in the gym. In this audio training, you will learn how to use the shame of past mistakes to fuel your secret burning desires and divine calling to make an impact in the world. You know what? I'm going to download it. I should have downloaded it before I even did this. Sometimes I don't think. Of course, you can find out more about Kat Kim and the School of Divine Confidence at www.katkim.com. And don't forget, she's on social media. Facebook /Kat Kim Official, and also at Instagram at Kat Kim Official. That is some good marketing, folks. Well, that is episode 24 of the Joyous Expansion Podcast. Hope you didn't get turned off by my little rant at the end. But man, the interview was awesome, energizing, excited to get it out there. This is why I created the podcast, is for interviews like that, for episodes like this. I love it. I'm in love with this podcast. Energize, motherfucker. I'm using good place cuss words in my content from now on. So I am Brett Dupree, your Joyous Expansion Life Coach, champion of authentic joy, catalyst of transformation, grand poobah guru of the Church of Awesome. If you have any questions, you can send an email to me at BRE2TSDUPR2Es@joyousexpansion.com. Also, you can go to joyousexpansion.com to learn more about me, and I also have a free book for there, Breaking Out of Fear, Your Prison of Fear. I do that every day. Making this podcast is not always easy for my fragile ego. If you like this podcast, of course, leave a like, subscribe, all the fun things. Leave a review. That would help. Go to and if you want to see other episodes, especially check out Camille Elizabeth. If you like this one, you'll really like that one. Also, Sherazad is another one you would like as well. It's very similar. Those just two pop in my head as ones I think people should listen to more because there's amazing interviews. Go to pod.joyousexpansion.com. Thank you for making this long. If you truly listen to this podcast, just know from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate who you are and I love you. And once again, I remind you to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play my jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach. Good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue. I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.